conditions which you have to treat, and this gives you a wide spectrum of indications. Now we know that when we have a injury, there's an inflammatory soup of inflammatory mediators like substance P, cytokines, and all these sensitize the afferent nerve terminals, and the active nociceptors become sensitized, and the sleeping nociceptors, they awaken up, and there are also new nociceptors which come up, and they finally result in lower threshold, increased response to the given stimulus, and spontaneous discharge. So you have spinal neuron. There's an activation of by trauma, metabolic causes, infection, pressure, and a number of things come into picture. There's an alteration on sodium channel expression, there's spontaneous activity, calcium channels, serotonin, norepinephrine, all these get activated, and also crosstalk causes the adjacent neurons also to fire. So there is exactly a war of pain because we have a number of things to deal with. And what do we have in armamentarium? We have pharmacological invasive injection therapies. Apart from these, we have psychological, physical, and alternative therapies. So what are co-analgesics? These are the drugs that are used primarily for treating conditions other than pain, but may be analgesic in selected circumstances. Now, even the WHO ladder of pain includes the use of adjuvant or co-analgesics right from level 1. Now, according to the pharmacotherapy guidelines, the medications that we use for as a co-analgesic should give a significant pain relief, tolerable side effects, improvement in function with taking care of toxic serum levels, and you should give a realistic approach in using these medications for the patients. Now, according to the actions which we require, if you are taking care of sodium channels, potassium channels, and ectopic activity, you can use carbamazepine, sodium valproate. For neurotransmitter release from calcium channels, we have gabapentin, pregabalin. For NMDA, you have ketamine. Descending immediate pathways, you have TCAs and opioids like morphine, fentanyl. And now, according to the NICE guidelines, which came as early as 1996, you had tricyclic antidepressants, which were said to be at the first line of drugs along with anticonvulsants. Second line of drugs is another group of antidepressants like SNRIs, SSRIs, along with topical lignocaine. Third line of drugs are also opioids and tramadol. Additional therapy includes capsaicin cream and muscle relaxants. So we start with anticonvulsants. These usually stabilize the peripheral nerve endings, and gabapentin and carbamazepine are more evidence-based. A variety of indications have taken use of anticonvulsant, like postherpetic neuralgia, diabetic neuropathy, trigeminal neuralgia, fibromyalgia. A minimum of 4 to 6 weeks of trial should be given, and you have to start slow and go slow, especially for elderly age group. And dose is titrated above slowly with the therapeutic or adverse effects are observed, and when you're tapering the doses, you have to do it very slowly. Carbamazepine blocks the sodium channels, inhibits norepinephrine uptake. It has a hepatic metabolism and excreted through kidneys. A daily schedule starting should be around 200 milligram per day. Start preferably in the HS dose. You step up with 200 milligram per day over every 2 to 3 days, and do a maximum of 1500 milligram per day. NNT, all of these drugs are, efficacy of these drugs is described in terms of NNT, that is number needed to treat. Lesser the number means more effective the drug, higher the number means less effective the drug. So having NNT of 1.8 means that carbamazepine is one of the very effective drugs. Adverse effects is common to all anticonvulsants in the form of sedation, nausea, bone marrow depression, vertigo, and diplopia. Gabapentin increases concentration of GABA in brain eliminated by renal excretion, and start with 300 milligram per day in the HS dose. Similarly, you increase 300 milligram usually every weekly, and the dose ranges from 900 to 3600 milligram per day. NNT is little higher as compared to carbamazepine, and dose rate side effects are same. Pregabalin, you again start with a dose of around 75 milligrams in the night, and lesser doses for elderly because they may present with somnolence, hypotension the very next day to start the dose. NNT for this is a little higher as compared to carbamazepine. Adverse effect profile is same for all the anticonvulsants. Then we come to the next group of drugs, antidepressants. To begin with, we start with TCAs in the form of amitriptyline, nortriptyline, clomipramine. They inhibit the uptake of noradrenaline and serotonin. Hence, they increase the concentration available and inhibits the neurotransmission in the spinal cord. Uh, they are divided into tricyclic antidepressants, SSRIs, and SNRIs. The common ones used are amitriptyline, nortriptyline. Among SSRIs, you have fluoxetine and duloxetine, the SNRI groups. Uh, TCAs are considered to be better as compared to SSRIs, SNRIs, as if we take care of, if we account for the NNT as a comparison tool. They have, even for different indications, the NNTs differ for all the effective drugs. They have, newer drugs have come up, but our experience with most of these drugs is limited. Side effect profile is usually is similar to, again, anticonvulsants. Hypotension, tachycardia may be seen in CVS. Anticonvulsant side effects in form of dry mouth, blurry vision is usually not accepted. And these side effects are for both anticonvulsants, antidepressants. They usually last for first couple of weeks. By around second week, toward end of second week, most of the patients are quite comfortable with these effects, or the intensity of the effects quite decreases, and it is then that you start building up on the dose concentrations of these drugs. Amitriptyline is started at a dose of 50 to 150 milligram per day, and it takes around 2 weeks for its effect to appear. Side effect profile remains the same. And duloxetine is one of the most commonly used drugs as of now, and you start again with 20 milligram HS and slowly build up to around 60 to 100 milligram per day over a period of around 1 month. Next class of drugs is local anesthetics. Now, after any nerve injury, we know that sodium channels get activated at the end of sensitive fibers. So, if you are able to stop this triggering factor, it will help in analgesia. Both lignocaine have been used widely as for local application, as local infiltrations and transdermal patches. IV in the form mainly for fibromyalgia or for burst suppressions in onco patients. So you start with a dose of around 5 milligram per kg over 33 to 45 minutes, send the patient home, call back after 2 weeks for a second burst. Oral form is mentioned as maxilitine, but I have never used the drug. IV installation of lignocaine cause both CNS and CVS effects. The common drugs used are amla, lignocaine, fentanyl, buprenorphine, clonidine, capsaicin available in the transdermal patches. So these have depot preparation, and they are active within the skin, soft tissues, and peripheral nerves. Since the serum levels attained with these medications is less as compared to IV medication, so side effect profile is much less as compared to other modes of intake of these drugs. Amla is mainly used for perioperative analgesia, and lignocaine patch and the analgesia lasts for around 18 hours, and it has to be applied on hairless, non-traumatic intact skin surface. Alpha-2 blockers is the next category of the drugs. It includes clonidine, tizanidine, and dexmedetomidine, and their role in neuropathic pain is little unclear. The main use of clonidine is in orofacial neuralgia, headaches, and diabetic neuropathies. Side effect profile includes dry mouth, sedation, sexual dysfunction, orthostatic hypotension, bradycardia. Dexmedetomidine was introduced and has received FDA approval as early as 1999, but usually for ICU use. By around 2005, it has been introduced in anesthesia and analgesia for while performing invasive procedures, and nowadays it is even used for intrathecal, epidural, and local infiltration, although the trials are limited. The next drug in the category is capsaicin cream. It's a vanilloid compound from chili powder, and available at 0.0575 percentage. Around takes around 6 weeks to show its action, and it may start with initial burning. It's commonly used for post-herpetic neuralgia, diabetic neuropathies, and CRPS. It's not used as a single as a first line treatment for any pain management. It's only used as an adjunct therapy for pain. Next class of drugs is corticosteroids. There's a whole list of drugs which is available, and common ones among these are triamcinolone, which is available as 40 milligram per ml. Methylprednisolone is also 40 milligram per ml. Before starting, we should keep in mind that all these corticosteroids, they lead to adrenal suppression. So long-term or a repeated use of corticosteroids should be done very carefully. And if you're converting oral formulation to IV or IV to oral or IV to epidural, so we need to take care of this chart so as to convert equianalgesic doses. Then it has been used for severe neuropathic pain, intra-articular uses, local and epidural injections. And in corticosteroids, still that in cases of cancer pain, when you are waiting for the action of radiotherapy or other interventions to work, these are very good analgesic at that particular time. Mode of action, it reversibly blocks the C fiber input, stabilizes the leukocyte lysosomal membrane, prevents the release of destructive and hydrolases from leukocytes, and reduces the fibroblast formation. We should know that causes Cushing syndrome over a long period of time, muscle wasting, ulceration and cataracts, and diabetes mellitus. Then we come to the drugs which have NMDA receptor antagonist properties. Common ones among use are ketamine and amitriptyline. Studies show very equifocal results. See, the NNT, number needed to treat, is very high, so its use for long-term therapy is limited. Infusion of ketamine is commonly used for palliative care in onco pain patients. Complications being visual disturbances, hallucination, dizziness, and sedation. Then we come to muscle relaxants. Its use is for painful reflex muscular dystrophies. Mechanism of action is usually not clear, and common ones among use are baclofen, diazepam, and methocarbamol. Baclofen is a GABA analog and reduces the muscle tone, clonus, and spasm without producing undue cortical suppression, and it's available in peroral and injectable formation. It's indicated in the use of painful spasms, post-spinal injury, demyelinating disease, neuropathic pain. Calcitonin suppresses the bone resorption and calcium release, so it's helpful in osteoporosis and bony pains, also in skeletal metastasis in Paget's disease. And a higher dose is used especially for patients who have bony metastasis. The other class of drugs is botulinum toxin. It binds to the neuromuscular junction and thus prevents nerves from signaling muscles to contract. It has been used for allodynia, hyperesthesia, CRPS, spontaneous burning pain. Now, drugs can also be delivered by intervention options in the form of peripheral nerve blockades, neuroaxial nerve blocks, sympathetic nerve blocks, intrathecal and spinal cord stimulation. Among these, we have local anesthetics, which can be used by infiltration, IVRA, and the next class of drugs is neurolytic agents. It causes destruction of sympathetic, sensory, and motor component of the nerve. They cause precipitation of lipoproteins and mucoproteins, results in sclerosis of nerve fiber and myelin sheath, also causes the Wallerian degeneration. Common one is alcohol, which is hyperbaric to CSF. A minimum of 33% is required for any analgesia. Denervation usually takes around 1 week, so this has to be explained to the patient prior to instilling alcohol to the patient. Phenol is hyperbaric to CSF, concentration of 5 to 6% to begin with. Degeneration takes around 2 weeks, so again patient has to be informed before doing any procedure. glycerol finds its use in the Gazarian ganglion neurolysis. Hypertonic and hypotonic solutions are very infrequently used. Last class of drugs is sodium and calcium channel antagonists. Now, since most of the pain mechanisms are voltage gated, are mediated by voltage sensitive sodium and calcium channels. So if you can block these channels, so it might helpful in pain relief. Sodium antagonists are they prevent the action potential of an axon. They are classified according to sensitivity to ototoxin, and common ones are lidocaine, mexiletine, lamotrigine. Calcium channel blockers cause the blockade of N type of calcium channel found in superficial layers of dorsal horn, and it's mostly in the trial phases, although it has been used for migraine and chronic headaches. So this by this diagram was depicted by Dr. Prithviraj in his presentation in Barcelona. It says that whenever a neuron or a system, brain, is subjected to input from cognitive, emotion, or sensory by any injury, it interprets and gives the output in the form of changes in pain, motor affection, sensory and emotion affection. So all these outputs cannot be taken care of only by a single drug. So you have to use some co-analgesics to take care of pain in totality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chetan. Yeah. So he had given us the broad idea about the 8 adjuvant drugs, 8 groups of adjuvant drugs. He had given a good idea. Maybe you can go some more deeper. That's not a big issue. Maybe it's again revision. When I go on revising, it will get more into your brain. So you can go on revising. The next speaker does not need an introduction. Okay. I welcome Dr. Krishna Padan. He is the pain physician at Fortis Hospital and Kolkata. He is the well-known face in among the pain community. I am talking about pain physician community. Senior most and most wanted. Okay, wanted speaker. So, madam will be talking about most important topic, that pharmacotherapy of CRPS. Whenever we make a diagnosis CRPS, we always think intervention. We do something because it should be done. But only thing, it's not like that. We should not change the schedule. We can go for physiotherapy and pharmacotherapy. Madam will be giving us a broad idea how to be more aggressive in pharmacotherapy in case of CRPS. It's open to you, ma'am.
Yeah, because trials say the less of the invasive therapy. Sometimes it doesn't give any relief and, causes more pain. So where to go? Oh. Thank you, Dr. Rajmurthy, giving so nice introduction. How many people you are having the CRPS in your clinic frequently? I think all pain physician. And it's very difficult to treat as well as diagnose. Usually the CRPS diagnosis is more difficult and it is purely clinical. There is no test available. You can say you have to exclude other neuropathic pain syndrome and then you can diagnose. And even whenever patient comes, I can tell you this patient of mine, 48 years old patient, came from the Siliguri nearby the Calcutta, and and this patient, the interesting part, her son came and he says, "Madam, मेरी मम्मी को CRPS है." तो मैंने कहा, "How do you know she has the CRPS?" नहीं, हमने आपकी वेबसाइट में देखा और उनका सारा सिम्टम साइन आपने जो लिखा वैसा ही है. And in fact, that patient went to many doctors there and big hospital, and they have done many tests, including because she developed this skin changes. Yeah, you have the. No? Okay. So, like you can see the skin changes with the bone changes she developed, and she came with the covered hand, as the most of the CRPS patient, they come with the covered their limbs which are painful, and they don't allow even fan air and they don't allow you touch. So it's so much painful dysesthesia and allodynia present. So she came and they tested and they have done, because of the skin changes, they have done the many MRI, angio, and they got some block. So they put her on the warfarin therapy, and she developed INR3, and she developed the anal bleeding and all. So suddenly their family person, they said, one of them may be the intelligent, no, she has the CRPS, and they flew to Calcutta and came to me. The second case, again, a very big fatty lady. Just I saw 1 month back her. She again she's 120 kg, 60 years old, and she was lying down in the bed, even not moving. She was not going to toilet even, and she has the very painful right limb and very burning pain. You know, it was the very burning in nature. And again, she was not allowing me to touch. And MRI was showing the L4-5 disc prolapse. They went to actually neurosurgeon, and when they saw the limb she is not allowing to touch the limb, then he referred to me. So these are the two patients, you know, they came with the different diagnosis. So it was actually CRPS, which is really difficult, because the other people, they don't think, we think if we see the MRI, oh, she has because she was having the radicular pain also, so you can think, but the surgeon was really very smart, and he said, no, I will not touch her, she doesn't need any disc surgery, you go to the pain physician. So in 1993, ISP, because there are history, you know, the most of the thing, CRPS was diagnosed in the Second World War. So it is a post-war syndrome, the hand and but in 1993, the ISP has clearly introduced the term complex regional pain syndrome. Previously, it was Sudeck dystrophy, and many names they have to describe all the pain states that previously would have been diagnosed as RSD or Costello-like syndrome. So CRPS complex, varied and dynamic clinic presentation, regional, non-dermatome. The most important diagnostic point is the non-dermatome distribution of the pain. Pain out of proportion. You cannot think the problem is so much that she is even not allowing the touch and crying and crying. And syndrome, of course, it's a syndrome. So CRPS can be two types. CRPS type 1, where after an initiating noxious stimuli, there may or may not be associated nerve injury. But in type 2, there is some associated nerve injury. Causes, there are few causes. Sometimes you don't know that my previous patient is not giving any history of any trauma or any injury or any bite, something, anything. But the second patient was diabetic, first of all, and second, she was having the disc prolapse. I don't know whether the CRPS was secondary to that. So causes unknown. The 45 patient, they have the fracture, because most of your orthopedic friends, first once you start, initial phase of my practice, I used to give most of the steroid, because I used to get so much of the, you know, hands from this Colles fracture, post-Colles fracture, CRPS from my orthopedic friends. So you're so happy, you know, you're giving the blocks, but nowadays I have to think before giving the block. This comes after many years of the practice. You should think and think I should give her. So 45% of the patient, they have come after the fracture, 18% following sprain, 12% following surgery, less than 10 is spontaneous, there is no history. And most of the time the upper limb is involved and the less of the lower limb. So treatment part, most puzzling and the complicated chronic neuropathic pain to treat, because it involves all the systems, sensory, motor and the autonomic. And the objective of treatment is you should give less pain, increase function and return to the gainful employment and everyday life activity. So options are pharmacotherapy, physical rehabilitation, psychological support. That's why I kept the intervention in the 4th, because less of the invasive therapy you will do and you will be more happy. So pharmacotherapy, as I said, the diagnosis is difficult. I'm very puzzled. We have the lots of trial for the many neuropathic pain, but we have the very less trials for the CRPS, as this disease is very notorious and the very difficult to follow up and giving trial, because very painful. So very, very less. And it should be, you should be drug specific, and you need the more trials to do for the pharmacotherapy, but still I got some of the evidences and the trials which I mentioned for the pharmacotherapy. So the most common drug, you know, sometimes I think when I was doing only anesthesia, I was thinking, क्या है, spinal है, epidural है, फिर tube डालो, और क्या है हमारे पास? So like, you know, sometimes you're doing pain, okay, you're doing blocks, but after 5-7 years, you also become bored, oh, only these are the blocks. Then medicine, Sometimes I think maybe my secretary will say, "Madam को 4 दवाई लिखती है खाली वही 4 दवाई का नाम मालूम है क्या?" Maybe you can change the brand, but how many drugs you have in the pain? So the most common and our most favorite is the anticonvulsant. But in the CRPS, the most work has been done for the gabapentin. The gabapentin trial has given for even the 600 and 900 milligram. The gabapentin has the effect, good effect for the CRPS. It controls the pain and the sensory deficit, but you should always weigh against the side effects, because once you are increasing the dose, the side effects come. The most of the work has been done for the gabapentin, but less has been done the pregabalin and the other like carbamazepine. Now, few of the centers, they are using the oxycarbamazepine over the carbamazepine for the less side effects. And pregabalin also is the more favorable drug because of again the linear pharmacology, and you have the less side effects. The next drug is the antidepressant. The antidepressant often used for the sleep disturbance because it gives the good sleep. And most of the time I have seen people now say, "वो छोटी गोली तो मैडम लिख देना नहीं तो नींद नहीं आती." So sometimes it becomes the dependency for the sleep, the antidepressant. But surprisingly, the tricyclic antidepressant are less working in the for the CRPS. The most of the drugs which are working in the CRPS are the newer drugs like the duloxetine, venlafaxine, and the mirtazapine. So the tricyclic antidepressant like amitriptyline and all, they are working very less, and the less with the trials it works less. Opioids, again the opioids use are very questionable, but for the widespread pain and severe pain you can use the opioids, and it gives the data saying it gives the good result, demonstrating good, they improves the quality of life. But you always have to again you have balance with the side effects, but because sometimes people they become they don't tolerate Tramajet, they leave the other. And if you will speak about the buprenorphine or morphine, they will just jump, because for the cancer patients it's difficult to counsel them to use the morphine. So how can you counsel for the, and we don't have the much opioids in India, so very difficult. So opioids, other than the Tramajet, I don't think people are using the other drugs. NSAID, actually NSAIDs or any NSAID in any neuropathic pain, including the CRPS, the previously role was very questionable. But nowadays, with the recent recognition of the role of the spinal cyclooxygenase and its effect on the hyperalgesia, there is again renewed thinking of using the COX-2 inhibitor. So now the most trials are, we want more trial to do for the NSAID use in the CRPS because of this newer thinking. Steroid, again the limited use, usually for the short term. The long term, again the side effect of the steroid, as the doctor. So systemic corticosteroid mostly used are the oral prednisolone, usually 30 milligram per day, but always very short term, not the long term use. Long term, again they have the lots of side effects, and there is no supporting data for other corticosteroid other than the prednisolone in the CRPS. Free radical scavenger. As we know, in the CRPS, there is a lots of excessive inflammatory reaction can lead to the overproduction of the free radicals. So there are some drugs role of the free radical scavenger, like DMSO, the dimethyl sulfoxide is used, and it given the good result with and the other is the N-acetylcysteine. Two drugs are tried, and they have shown the very greater improvement in the pain, but mannitol has the no difference in the results. Bisphosphonates is a great drug to use in the, and it has given the very promising role in the CRPS, and especially the bone demineralization often occurs in the CRPS, and there are many RCTs available, and aldronate is and pamidronate, two drugs are tried, and aldronate even oral or IV you can use both way, and it is giving very very good result in the CRPS. Sodium channel blocker, intravenous lignocaine has role in all the neuropathic pain and in the CRPS also, so you can use the lignocaine. And oral drugs like the maxillatine, oxycarbamazepine, they are having under trial, not much evidence or the other available. NMD antagonist, very, our favorite drug being anesthetist or being pain physician, ketamine. But nowadays ketamine is again a restricted drug in India, so it's not freely available. but it has role. Low dose IV ketamine, you can use 5 to 7 milligram per kg per hour for 5 to 7 days. You admit the patient and you can use this drug. And few centers, they make the oral ketamine, they mix with the juices. Usually oral ketamine they are using in the cancer, but there is a publication in the pain practice. They have shown, Vincent and al, ki oral ketamine for some days it is giving a very good relief in the CRPS. Adrenergic drugs, as there are vascular involvement in the CRPS, the alpha adrenergic antagonists like phentolamine, phenoxybenzamine, clonidine and rizapine, they are clinically tried for the CRPS. There are good evidences favorite the drug. The rationale is used as we know the sympathetic nervous system, autonomic nervous system involved in the CRPS, so it gives the good relief. There are use of the phenoxybenzamine, which is published in the pain practice again, but there is no role of the clonidine, oral clonidine. There is no role. So phenoxybenzamine have shown the good result, but not the other drugs. Topical agents again very useful, but I don't think we have the 5%. I don't know if somebody knows which names available. In Calcutta, at least 5% lignocaine patches are not available. They have shown the very good result. In fact, in both of the patient, I prescribe also, but they didn't get the 5% lignocaine patches. Capsaicin, but I will tell you should be very careful about using the capsaicin. My first patient, I think they got 1% or 2% capsaicin cream they brought from outside when I returned, and she was so angry with me because it gives so much burning pain. She got so angry. Patient was just picked up the phone to me and given so much, So you should always careful. You should always apply the Prelox cream or something and then use the capsaicin. Don't prescribe the capsaicin to patient. Patient will go off and it's very difficult. The one more drug is used as there has been thalidomide. Now people are trying thalidomide as a treatment of CRPS because base is again the inflammatory cytokinins may play a role in CRPS, and thalidomide is an inhibitor of the tumor necrotizing factor alpha. So they are now under trial and people are trying and publishing. Calcitonin has received considerable interest. People tried because as calcitonin is also used for the demineralization of the bones. So, but they are not very favorable results of the calcitonin. The 4 RCTs has been investigation, the use of the calcitonin, not much use. So drug affecting microcirculation, as this disease, the microcirculation is affecting, the people has used tadalafil, which we use most of the time in ICU and other places for. So this, as they have the problem with the microcirculation, people are trying the tadalafil. And one more drug, serpazirylate hydrochloride. It is a 5H2 antagonist, and this also help in the improving the microcirculation. Intrathecal guiconite, there is a clinical report available, and they published in the again a pain practice, intrathecal use of the guiconite for the CRPS. These are the individual reports which I got from the different journals and taken from the different journals, but not commonly used drugs. These are the few drugs which has the few clinical reports available. Like intravenous immunoglobulins also, it is published in an internal medicine. So there are few cases or few case studies. So I'm just giving overview. These are not the commonly drug used, but I'm just giving overview of the few drugs which maybe next 5 years it will be used more for CRPS. But if the patient has the very, muscle spasm or like that, so you can use the muscle relaxant like clonazepam, baclofen, but it's not a primary drug for the CRPS. It's an adjuvant for the treatment. The other newer medication which is tried, it is again I taken from the journal. It is a neridronate. It is has the very promising result. It is a new bisphosphonate, and it is just published in 2015. So neridronate, I don't know when it will be available or commonly used. And I have taken most of this trial or this review of the evidences from the journal of the, this is from the Canada Journal of Anesthesiology 2010, and one from this pain headache. These 2 journals I have taken most of the, So the other treatment, just for overview, just somatic blocks, perineural blocks, regional intravenous blocks, sympathetic blocks, and continuous infusion. In my first of the patient, I did this Stilate RF, and she has really good result. Now it's 8 months, and her daughter always call me and saying her mother is fine. And spinal cord stimulator if the cases. And the other patient, I given the lumbar sympathetic block. Again, after diagnostic, she was fine, so I had done the radio frequency. And now she is going to toilet, and she is under rehabilitation because she was just bedridden. Psychology, psychiatric, of course, very good result. But I don't know how many pain physician have the experience. My experience, sometime, if I send them the psychiatrist 2-3 patient, they just go away from me. And you know, one patient's father got so angry. आप क्या सोचते मेरी बेटी क्या पागल है ये है वो. So it's really difficult. And you know, in humble way, in very good way, I told. I don't know how this problem, maybe psychiatrists can help. Okay, how to refer them. You know, very difficult to refer them. Sometimes I means, you know, one or fibromyalgia patient, she got so angry, you know, and I don't know, means how to solve this problem. Everywhere we are is teaching psychology, psychiatric is very important part of the pain treatment. But how to refer unless you are in institute. In private practice, is really difficult to refer them. Very difficult to refer the patient to the psychiatrist. You know, I don't know. Physical therapy for rehabilitation is important. And initial phase, once a patient is the pain, you should treat pain first and then give the physical therapy. Mirror therapy is also helpful in the CRPS. My patient said, don't bring the mirror. She was telling my physiotherapist, don't bring my mirror. मैं क्या mirror देख के कुछ नहीं करूँगी. So like, you know, these things are very difficult to make them understand. Sincerely, I sent the physiotherapist, I said, do the mirror therapy for her. And she said, madam, वो बहुत गुस्सा हो गई है. Very difficult. So this is a treatment protocol for the CRPS, which I said. But as I said, the pharmacotherapy, physical therapy, psychotherapy, last come the intervention. Don't jump, because initial phase, if patient develops the more pain after intervention, it's very difficult to consult. See, it's as a pain physician, what I've seen, it's very easy to learn the intervention, you know, most easy, because being anesthetist, we are expert to put the needle. The most difficult part, especially, sometimes it happens your diagnostic block is successful, and once you are doing radio frequency, they come back after 1 month, and so, अरे इतना खर्चा किया क्या हुआ, like, you know, very difficult to counsel them. It's very difficult to tell them. Whatever you say, कि I'm not promising you a result, whatever, but they say, madam, but you have done this and very difficult, now what to do, you know. So you should learn to, main is the counseling. Counseling is the very important part of all the patients. Counseling. Putting them on the drugs, very easy, but when they don't take the drugs, you have to follow them, because most of the patient, they leave, they themselves leave. Sedation ho gaya, chakkar aa gaya, ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, they will stop the drugs. And putting the needle is really very easy, but when to put, how to put, and when the failure come of your, most of the time, you will see slowly, your patients will show you the failure of the blocks, then how to counsel. These are the most important things to learn from conference, to talk to your senior. These are very, very, of course, self-learning is there, but you know, the most time, being anesthetist also, it's very difficult to, you know, we never exposed to counseling. So nowadays, once you are sitting in the chamber, and you know, one of the surgeon got angry with me. Why? Because he said, I'm referring you patient, he's the mad, who back pain बोल रहा है, उसको तुम बोलो Mellinger कर रहा है, भगा दो. But I given HLA-B27 to do it, and it became the positive. And the patient was all right. I was believing the patient. Now he got so angry with me, you know, in the hospital. You know, like, you know, ego issue. There are many issues. Though these things you will get across, you know, how to solve this. You know, we are talking about the interdisciplinary, but it happens. Oh, anesthetist ने diagnose किया, because they still don't accept whatever. Miss, मैं head of the department हूँ, मेरा patient, मैंने कहा कुछ नहीं है, तुमने क्यों दिया test? You know, like, so with this, thank you very much. Many questions, you know, we have, like, you know, how to solve all this. Still, I have problems. How to solve these patients too.
Thank you, ma'am. We are going for the last topic. So we can have the last topic as a brush off. So I like to call Dr. Anand. Okay.
Actually, I am happy to see everyone more than presenting here. Okay. I'll just start the topics. Okay. No, boss. ತಪ್ಪು ಅನ್ಸಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ ತಕೊಂಡು ಮುಡ್ತೀರ ಅದು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹಂಗೆ போகணுமா thank you. If any mistake I do, our moderator is there to clear. Okay, I'll just go to the topic. So the topic for me is very clear. The common medicines in interventional pain management. So what are the things we use for interventions? So now the topic is very clear, and in this around 70% Dr. Chetan has completed actually. Like what are the things required if a patient comes to you, you are putting the needle. Okay, it can be diagnostic or therapeutic block or whatever it may be, radio frequency or like that. So what drugs you are using? So first you will be putting the local. So we should know about little bit about the local anesthetics, and next we should know after putting the local, we will put in the needle, and then you will be injecting the drug. So what drug you will be using in this diagnostic and therapeutic blocks? For diagnostic you will be using lignocaine, and therapeutic you will be using you can go for steroids, or you can go for neurolytics. Neurolytics, what you will be using? You know, alcohol, phenol, glycerols, other things. Okay, so little bit about everything I will be discussing. Okay, and apart from this, in this you can categorize the basic procedures and the advanced procedures. For basic, what are the things I discussed you? But for advanced, like caudal neuroplasty, cervical neuroplasty, for that you will be using hyaluronidase and hypotonic saline. So these things we should know. And apart from this, you will be using for headaches, you will be going for these interventions like Botox. Okay, so these are the mostly with this, actually speaking, what that Krishna madam said, its intervention is very easy. Only if you go for this drugs, other things, it becomes very tough for us to learn. Okay, and apart from this, you can go for advanced procedures like intrathecal. Intrathecal, the madam has said about the ziconotide. It is nothing that it is taken from the crab. It is otherwise called as conotaxin. Okay, so I will just go slowly with my first slide. Okay, so what are the local anesthetic agents we commonly use? Commonly, I think most of the pain physicians, they use lignocaine, and that too Xylacort. Because what happens if you are using bupivacaine, if you are going for any even small injections, if the patient had some complication, if you are using bupivacaine, you have to monitor the patient for many hours. But if you are using lignocaine, you can cut short. You can monitor only for 60 minutes to 1 hour. Okay, so I always go for lignocaine, and that too Xylacort, because preservative free. Okay, the drugs which are used clinically to produce reversible loss of sensation in the circumscribed area of body, that is the local anesthetic drug. And most of the clinically useful local anesthetic agents consist of an aromatic ring linked by a carbonyl containing moiety through a carbon chain to a substituted amino groups. There are two groups. One is esters and next is amide. Normally nowadays we never use esters for specifically for interventional pain management. The topic is very clear. Okay, and we go for amides only. So lidocaine, mepivacaine, bupivacaine, ropivacaine, and recently levobupivacaine, many drugs have came. Okay, it is up to you. Pain, we cannot say interventions only as this chronic pain. You can go for labor analgesia also. That is also intervention only. So for that you will be using ropivacaine. Okay, so that also we should little bit cover. And next come the esters. Esters are relatively unstable in solutions and are rapidly hydrolyzed in the body by plasma cholinesterase and other esterases. One of the main breakdown products is para-aminobenzoate, which is associated with allergic phenomena and hypersensitive reactions. If you compare amides, are relatively stable in solution or slowly metabolized by hepatic amidases, and hypersensitive reactions to amide local anesthetics are extremely rare. In current practice, we are using mostly amides. Okay, so these are the local anesthetic agents. If you are going from short acting to long acting, procaine to tetracaine, procaine, chlor, procaine, lignocaine, mepivacaine, like that you can go from potency like 1 to 16 and duration from short, medium, long. Okay, next, what are the problems? Problems because of the drug. If it goes to blood, it can have CNS toxicity, cardiac toxicity, and arrhythmias, because it blocks the sodium channels. So it depends. If you are using lignocaine, the blockage will be for some time. But if you are using this bupivacaine, it is slowly absorbed and slowly it is excreted. So bupivacaine cardiac toxicity is much more difficult to treat. Okay. And next, I will go for the neurolytic agents. What are the neurolytic agents? And in neurolytic also, you be very clear what are the neurolytics should be used for interventions. Okay. I normally, and I think most of the interventions are using, like if you go for trigeminal, if you can go for glycerol. For celiac plexus, you go for alcohol. For if you go for superior hypogastric, you go for phenol, because phenol is having more vascular propensity to act. So the complications are more if you are using nearby this celiac ganglion. Okay. So what are the things we can use? One is alcohol and phenol, and next is glycerol. And alcohol normally, like somatic, if you want to block both sensory and motor, then you can go for the concentration more than 75%. But if you want to block only sympathetic, you go only for less than 33%, it is the accepted. But you can go up to 60% if you want to block sympathetic system. Okay. And next you can use phenol. Phenol usually 6% to 10% you can use. Normally I use 6% because 6% it is easy to prepare. Okay. And next comes the glycerol. Glycerol actually it is hardly matters whether you are using 50% or 100%. The only thing you will be using in the trigeminal area. So the volume you should not you should restrict to maximum 0.3 to 0.5. Don't go more than that. The percentage hardly matters. Okay. And glycerol, if you compare with alcohol, phenol and glycerol, alcohol if you are injecting, what happens? It gives burning sensation. So you should little bit use lignocaine before injecting the alcohol, and wait for some time and then go for alcohol injection. But if you are going for phenol, it's a local anesthetic. So nothing to add with phenol. And glycerol, the thing is glycerol you can add with phenol also. Okay. And a little bit about the mechanisms. What is the alcohol acts by precipitation of the proteins in neural tissue and extraction of phospholipids and cholesterol, resulting in neural degeneration, and produces non-selective neural destruction, resulting in demyelination and subsequent Wallerian degeneration. As the basal lamina of Schwann cell is spared, the axons can regenerate. However, the cell body destruction, as in ganglion blocks, does not result in regeneration. Okay. Normally we use in 50 to 60% because we normally go for this sympathetic blocks. Don't go for 100% blocks. Okay. Alcohol must commonly be used for the neurolysis of trigeminal, celiac only, but these things nowadays we are not using, like trigeminal, lumbar, superior and all. Okay. And other thing like alcohol, phenol you can use for intrathecal phenolization or intrathecal alcohol, because in that you will be using the percentage of alcohol around 100%, and even this phenol, but the thing is, since alcohol is hypobaric, the pain dependent area should be in the upper level. If the patient is in left lateral, the patient pain should be in the right side. Okay. So because it is alcohol is hypobaric, and for phenol, the dependent portion of pain should be in the dependent posture. If I am having the left side pain, I should be lying in the left lateral position, because phenol is hyperbaric. So that is the difference, and little bit tilt of the patient is required, because our dorsal horn is more of sensory. Okay. So this consideration we have to take care. And regarding phenol, just now I discussed. And phenol in lower concentration acts as a local anesthetic, but at higher concentrations it is neurodestructive, and commonly we use 6 to 10%. And same I discussed just now, hypobaric and hyperbaric. Okay. The same action, same like alcohol, this is also having this neural destruction. What are the complications? One thing, if you are injecting the skin and other target tissue can be necrosis, sloughing, and the most important, dedifferentiation syndrome. You are blocking the nerve. What happens? So the dedifferentiation syndrome starts, and post-procedure neuritis, and the most important other thing is anesthesia dolorosa. Anesthesia dolorosa, there will not be any sensation, but patient will have pain in that area. So that is also one of the complication. And if you are using the concentration higher, you can go for motor paralysis and other things like perineal and sexual dysfunction. And if you go for systemic complication, if you are using 60% under, nothing will happen. If you are injecting the alcohol inside the aorta also, nothing will happen. Okay. But if you are injecting more, then goes for the toxic reactions, the arrhythmias, and CNS excitation and depression. Okay. Initially it will be excitation, and next finally it will go for depression. Okay. And finally paraplegia, that's why in celiac I think I don't want to go too deep, because nowadays we use trans-aortic single needle technique, because it is more in front of the aorta. If you are using behind the aorta, you will be putting 2 needles and you will be injecting more volume, so it is very close to the foramen. So I think most of the good pain physicians, they go for trans-aortic. Okay. And then so if the spasm of artery of Adam is, paraplegia is common. Okay. And next, contrast agents. Contrast agents, don't be confused. It is there are two things. One is positive and negative. And positive, we always positive people because we want to relieve the pain. So we are using positive contrast agents. Okay. So what is positive contrast? And positive also we are using mostly non-ionic, because ionic, what happens if ionic hyperosmolarity, that also creates problem, and we normally go for non-ionic positive contrast agents. Okay. So two things, one is positive, negative, and then is ionic and non-ionic. We normally go for positive, non-ionic. Okay. So what are the desirable things should be we should consider for contrast agents? One is it should be satisfactory, it should be stable, and pharmacologically inert, and minimum sensitization. Okay. So other things I don't want to discuss, and other things this. And what is the recommendation? In a single, you use maximum according to the patient you think, because we are getting Omnipac, non-ionic positive contrast agents. We are using Omnipac. The thing is, always you take 1 ml of Omnipac and dilute to another 1 ml. So you make it 50%. If you are using 200 milligram per ml means you dilute, and you use, if you are using very thin build patient, dilute as much as possible. Don't use more this contrast. Okay, because the maximum you can use maximum per day is 3 gram per day. Okay. And next, what are the complications you can have? One is mild and severe complications. Mild is nausea, vomiting, feeling of warmth, blushing, chills, chest pain, facial swelling, and edema, abdominal pain. So other things I don't want to discuss. And severe side effects are dyspnea, hypotension, like their convulsions, and even paralysis. Okay. And before giving the dye, you have to assess. Already Madam Alka Madam has discussed about what are the assessments, history, hydration, everything you have to do it. Okay. And regarding the steroids, I think I should not go more. Chetan has discussed. Okay. What are how the steroids act? It's an anti-inflammatory. So okay, and it this image shows the best picture. The action, it is having the SPLA2 synthesis. Everything it is blocked by the steroids. Okay. And it is having anti-inflammatory effects and immunosuppressive effects. And we know this is the short acting like cortisone, hydrocortisone, and intermediate is prednisolone and triamcinolone, and long acting is dexamethasone and betamethasone. If you compare this potency, glucocorticoid potency, mineralocorticoid, you see this cortisone is having 25 milligram, 25 milligram, 25 times like that. Okay, and dexamethasone is having the more potency, because less milligram you can have more activeness. Okay, and then this already showed. These are the complications I don't want to discuss, like what are the chronic steroid like benign intracranial hypertension, cataracts, moon phase, and increased abdominal fat, avascular, this and all I don't want to discuss, osteoporosis, thinning of skin. Okay. And next, the most important thing is hypothalamic pituitary axis suppression. So that we should consider. So don't repeat the procedure. If you are doing transformed steroid today, don't repeat until 3 weeks or 4 weeks. For some steroids we have to wait at even for 6 weeks. Okay, again the pain comes, you somehow you manage with drugs. Don't go for next procedure immediately. Okay. And the most important thing is regarding steroids. Actually we are not having the betamethasone. Betamethasone, if you are adding with the local anesthetic, the particle size is particles does not forms. But if you use this methylprednisolone, what happened? The particles, so it can go to the end arteries and it can cause infarcts. Actually it is not recommended in India, but still everyone we are using methylprednisolone, depomedrol still now. Okay. And what are the other complications like sodium retention, like procedure related dural puncture, infection, damage to the spinal cord, and it can be infravascular and intravascular injections. Okay. And these are the, just now I discussed, like hyperglycemia, lipogenesis, so many complications are there. Okay. Regarding and limitations, limitation of 3 milligram per kg of body weight of steroid, or 210 milligram per year in an average person, and lifetime you can go 420 milligram of steroids. Okay. So per year don't go more than 3 milligram per kg. Okay. If a patient comes to you, you make a steroid cord, okay, to the patient. So ideally the patient should have a steroid cord, and if repeated within 2 weeks, betamethasone is the best, because the HPS suppression will be only for few weeks. Okay. And next comes the Botox. Botox we already a little bit discussed, but I will brush up. Okay. Botulinum toxin, it is prepared from the gram negative anaerobic bacterium Clostridium botulinum, and they produce flaccid paralysis by preventing the presynaptic release of acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction. Okay, there are 8 botulinum toxins. One is A, B, C, 2 types, and D, E, F, and G. And type A, B, E, F have been described to cause botulism, a syndrome of generalized muscle weakness following the ingestion of botulinum contaminated food. Botulism affects the extraocular and bulbar muscles with visual disturbance, often the presenting sign. If muscle weakness progresses to affect the respiratory muscles, respiratory paralysis and death may ensure. Okay. And in 1981, the US FDA approved Botox for treatment of strabismus, blepharospasm, and hemifacial spasm. And in 2000, Botox B was approved by FDA by treating cervical dystonia. Okay, and nowadays we are using many other specialties also. They are using for achalasia, anismus, BNN, BPH, dysphonia, dystonias, essential trauma. So many conditions are there nowadays. They are using. Okay, and there are 2 types. What clinically we use, one is Botox, botulinum toxin A and B. So A, it is called as Botox or Dysport in Botox in European countries, and Dysport mainly in US countries. Okay, and next comes the B. B, it is myoblock. Usually for clinical you always go for Botox A. Okay, and if you are using repeatedly, what happens, these antigens, it forms antibodies to the Botox. So then we have to go for B, Clostridium. So initially it's better to go for Botox. Okay. How the analgesic effects? The analgesic effects are attributed to secondary effects that may be the result of muscle paralysis, improved blood flow, and release of nerve fibers under compression by abnormally contracting the muscle, and perhaps more importantly, the effects of toxin on nociceptive neurons by preventing release of substance P and CGRP. And you see the ceiling effect of dose is per sitting is 360 units, and given no sooner than 12 weeks is recommended. And for myoblock B, okay, dose is 10,000 to 15,000 units. Usually they used to say in mouse units. Mouse units means 50% of the batch of mouse. It has been Swiss one mouse have been killed with a lethal dose. So that is the unit, mouse units. Okay. And what are the complications like flu-like syndrome? And next is like fever, chills, hypertension, diarrhea, abdominal pain, even muscular weakness. Patient may go for, if you are using more. And if for tension attack, if you are using, means there are some 27 points or something. So don't go more than like 50 units per sitting, per area. So if you are using like that, then you should not go more than 360, the recommended. Okay. And next comes the most common procedure. We always, initial days, once you start the pain practice, you will be getting celiac flexus, and next is failed back surgery. Other procedures slowly you have to develop. For failed back surgery, this hypertonic saline, because the action of hypertonic saline, usually like they used to say caudal neuroplasty. With Rax epidural needle, you will be putting the needle, and you will be putting the Rax epidural catheter, and you will be putting the needle, you will be injecting the dye, and once you see the filling defect, you will be noticing where the filling defect. That means the dye should not go to that place. So once you are noticing, you will be injecting the local steroid. Once you inject the local steroid, you put the catheter where there is no dye spread. Once you put the catheter in the required form, if there is the patient is having right side pain, you will be putting the needle from the left side. So the tip will be going towards the L5 neural foramen. Then after that, you just go for hyaluronidase and then suture the catheter, and then you fix, and then after giving the local, after 15 minutes after giving the local, you go for 20 minutes of hypertonic saline. Ideally we should go for 9%, but since we are not getting, we go for 3%. In India only 3% is available. Okay. And hypertonic saline is used in the procedure of percutaneous arteriolysis in the management of pain due to epidural fibrosis. The procedure is carried out by placing the tip of the soft spring, that is a Rax Fins catheter, within times there, and letting the injected fluid under pressure find the path of least resistance within the scar and open up the perineural space. Thus, the steroid and the hyperosmolar sodium chloride solution reach the appropriate site and provide anti-inflammatory effect and neural blockade. Okay, so this is the hypertonic saline, because the hypertonic action is, usually our body is 0.9%. If you are using 10%, what happens? It should increase in volume to 11 times. Then only it compensates to our body osmolarity of 0.9%. So it is slowly it is increased. Okay. Then once it is increased, it creates adhesions. And apart from this, it creates some heat lesions, and it is having some action on C fibers. Like that, they have postulated many things regarding this hypertonic saline. Okay. And then. Okay, this I have just now I discussed. And next is hyaluronidase. Just now I discussed. Hyaluronidase is once you are giving local steroid, you will be injecting the hyaluronidase, because we are injecting the hyaluronidase because it breaks the adhesions, so that after that if you are injecting hypertonic salines, it goes more nicely. Okay, it is an adjuvant that increases the absorption and dispersion of the other injected drugs or fluids and improves absorption of radio-opaque agents in subcutaneous urography. It is approved for the treatment of vitreous hemorrhages. And hyaluronidase reduces the obstacle that the interstitial matrix present to fluid and drug transfer. Hyaluronidase is used off-label in chronic pain management to facilitate removal of epidural adhesions with mechanical and or hydrostatic forces and to treat edema. The available powder what we are normally getting is 1500 international units. And other things I will not go, because these are the major opioids. And what are the other drugs? Interventions, we cannot do this. These and all. Regarding the interventions, I have described everything. So these are just other things like major opioids, minor short-acting analgesics. These are all oral drugs, okay? These are all opiate combination product, oral, topical, these antidepressants, skeletal muscles, and neuroaxial pharmacotherapy. What are the neuroaxial pharmacotherapy? One is you can go for morphine, hydromorphine, fentanyl, bupivacaine, and clonidine alpha-2 agonist, gabapentin anticonvulsants, and ziconotide. Just now, madam also I also discussed the N-type voltage-dependent calcium channel blockers. It is mainly for intrathecal pump for oncologic patients. Okay, and next is baclofen pump anticonvulsants. Thank you.